Hey, it's CD Bowden, your friendly internet-tired writer here, and when I was 13, I published the first book of a fantasy trilogy, and when I was 15, I published the last book in that fantasy trilogy. Do I regret it? No, but I definitely have doubts. And I definitely have things I would have done differently. So if you're an artist who hasn't taken the leap yet, or you have and you're flying into trees, this video's for you. I started homeschooling in grade 6. That's why I'm so quirky. But this allowed me way more time to write because I finished all my homework early. Anyways, in grade 7, I started writing a story. And one of my friends was also into writing at the time, so we decided to have a little bet to see who would finish their book first. I won. Beyond the Bridge was the first book I ever wrote, and I think it's kind of cool that a bet between 12-year-olds ended up starting my writing career. So, yeah. I feel like it says a lot about me that instead of writing one book for my first project, I decided to write a trilogy. Ambitious and always slightly over my head. Yeah, that sums me up. But everything seems to work out, so is my life a sitcom?
Things always even out for me.
But Cassidy, you might ask, what is your trilogy even about? Well, it's called the Mortal's End Trilogy, and it's about the land of Mortal is plagued with a growing darkness. A ruthless sorceress is taking revenge, and the only thing standing in her way has been locked away for 9 years. Until now. Eowyn is 18 and it's time to die. Her power-hungry uncle had mercy on her years ago, but he knows the only way to secure his throne is if the heir to it dies. But what neither of them could have predicted is that Eowyn manages to escape the sword, and out of the city that has been her torment and dream for the past 9 years. But to get away from her uncle's soldiers, she's going to have to journey beyond the bridge into an unknown world full of chaos and death, and is plunged into a war with the sorceress herself. That's what it's about. Sorry, it's been a while since I've written these, and I don't really go back and read them because by the time I'm done them, I've gone over them about like 4 or 5 times, and I've ripped them apart during the editing process, and I'm just sick of them. But yeah, this is my trilogy, and I'm so freaking proud of it. But it is, interesting. Before I get into the critique, I want to say that I'm not trying to bash my trilogy. There is stuff I did well, and there is stuff that my skill level hindered me from doing well. This video is supposed to be candid, so I can't just praise my trilogy, but it's also not fair of me to bash it, so just keep that in mind as we go along. When I was 13, I didn't understand most things about the art making process. For example, some writers wear their influences on their sleeves. I didn't realize I was wearing a shirt. I mean, you can totally tell my trilogy was influenced by Lord of the Rings, Snow White and the Huntsman, Merlin, etc. I mean, one of the main characters is literally named Eredon. Wonder where I got that from. Though I will say that while my story and characters are clearly influenced, they are still very much mine. For example, Eredon is very different from Aragorn. If they were the same character, Lord of the Rings would be very short, and my books would be not as violent. So, just trust me, okay? Beyond the inspirations, I had no idea how to write a book, let alone a trilogy. I just knew I wanted to. I mean, I did have some experience writing for school, but nothing to this extent. Now, I had a few ideas for each book, and that's kind of it. Plot, what? Character arcs, who? I don't know who you are. Now, I'm a plancer, so, I plan and free write. But back then, I was just free writing. I was going ham. In other words, I developed my trilogy to the best my skill set allowed me to at the time. Despite the obvious flaws, there are things that I did do well. My characters are not two-dimensional. Despite some rocky characterization at times, they are complex and distinct. And one of the best dynamics I've ever written is between two brothers who at least began in the trilogy, but they are also in my 4th book, We Shall Reap, which is part of the same world but comes before, but it was written after, so If you want to check that out, then it's down in the description. And I also think I built up a pretty cool villain. I mean, she's scary. And while there are tropes in my story, because every story has tropes, I think I did manage to subvert some more obvious fantasy tropes in my story. For example, the main character's arc is definitely not a typical fantasy. I realize how much I'm talking about my characters rather than the plot. So I guess characters have just always been the best part of my writing. I think it's interesting that even at a young age, I was trying to take a psychological perspective on the characters. I guess that's what happens when both your parents are therapists. Now, Awen, you've been locked up for 18 years. You're bound to have some strong feelings. So remember to use I feel statements. I feel betrayed and I feel sadness because I lost out on my childhood. And I just feel like I want to slit the throat of the man who put me here. Yes. So, tip number 1, I guess, spend time developing your characters. Even if you want to free write, I still highly suggest to at least develop and plan out your characters, make their profiles, etc. Because in my opinion, fixing plot holes is much easier than fixing frequently inconsistent characters. Okay, so I've worked with 2 editors. The first one worked on my trilogy, and the second one worked on We Shall Reap and my current work in progress. Before I get into this part, I do want to say I am so grateful to both of my editors. They have helped me grow as a writer immeasurably. Like, I truly believe that the editing process is when I grow the most as a writer and learn the most about the craft. Especially when I have to rewrite an entire book, which has now happened 3 times. 3! For my trilogy, my parents and I had no idea what we were doing, and so we went with the first editor we found. A romance editor who had never edited fantasy before. So maybe don't do that. I learned so much from that editor, and the readers of my trilogy can see the writing progress I've made from book 1 to book 3. And I credit a lot of that growth to my editor because just the process of going through it helped me grow. However, I have to acknowledge that it's not the best idea to hire an editor who does not specialize or has any experience in that genre. My current editor is a fantasy and sci-fi editor, and I didn't realize how much a fantasy book would benefit from that. And I think my trilogy could have turned out better if I had worked with a fantasy editor, because they know the genre better. Especially because I was a completely new writer. And so if I had an editor to ask questions to who had the knowledge of the genre, I think I could have fixed a lot of the mistakes and gained knowledge of the genre to better develop my story. Now, I'm not saying it would have been a masterpiece or even where my writing is today, but I think if guided by the right hands, get it? Right? If guided by the right hands, I feel like I could have fixed a lot of the issues and bettered the trilogy. But alas, my mistakes are your gain. So tip number 2, get an editor who fits your genre. They don't necessarily have to specialize in it, but at the very least, they should have experience editing it. Genres are a lot like shoes. You might be able to get it on your foot, but it doesn't mean it fits. Analogies. Or metaphors, or whatever it's called. I did graduate from public school, so. Here's the thing about publishing a book when you're 13. You're 13. I didn't know a lot of technical things that makes a good idea readable. And I do think it's a good idea. I think my trilogy could actually be like a great idea. There's no way to say this without sounding arrogant, but when I was younger, I was told by teachers and editors that my writing was advanced for my age. Again, I'm not trying to be arrogant, alright? But the thing is that my writing wasn't so advanced that you couldn't tell it was written by an amateur, and not so advanced that it was all that easy to read at times.
This doesn't make any sense!
Though I will reiterate that many people have enjoyed my books and found them readable, so you know, link in the description below. Seeing how much I've grown, it does kind of bug me that a lot of people will read my trilogy and think that this is all she's capable of doing. So I am proud of myself, but I can also see the issues that are hindering my trilogy from having more widespread appeal. Like, my parents and my grandparents have told me for years that my age is a selling feature. And yeah, maybe for like old people, but like, I don't want people to read my books because of how old I am. I want people to read my books because they're good, because they love them. Like, I don't write to show off my skill. I write because I want to tell a story and I want people to like the story. Because that's the thing, when I write, the characters, the story, the world, they become a part of me. And when I publish, that doesn't just leave, like, they stick with me, you know? And when I publish and finish the book, characters, the world, the story stays with me. So my trilogy being written by my past skill level feels like I'm leaving that story in stagnation. I'm not allowing it the opportunity to have its audience. And while I think it is a good story as is, I think it could be a great story given a bit of TLC. And that brings me to the future. I kind of want to redo my trilogy. Yeah, for people who have bought my trilogy, that news sucks, and it also sucks for my wallet because editing is not cheap. But I'm just a more seasoned writer now, and I think I can make the trilogy into a better story and something a lot of people can enjoy. Yeah, the idea of rewriting it feels like I'm erasing my childhood legacy and betraying my past self, but I would just be improving on her work. Plus, she doesn't actually exist, so I wouldn't change the basic idea, the characters. I would just make the story make more sense, and I would also probably add like 2 books. I'm not saying I'm 100% going to do this, but I am saying I'm 98% sure I'm going to do this. It just feels like something I have to do. Plus, I mean, now's the time to do it. I mean, it's not like I've sold thousands of copies and I don't have a giant book audience that would be really disappointed if I like just changed it on them and destroyed the canon. So, you know, if you want to buy an original edition of the trilogy or even just want to see what the heck I'm talking about, Amazon. That being said, I'm not going to be rewriting my other books. I'm happy with them, and yeah. I also don't want other writers or artists or dreamers taking this as me saying to not pursue your dreams when you're young. I think you should. Unless your passion is something real weird, then maybe you are too young. I mean, the only reason I'm even in a position to rewrite my trilogy is because I have become a semi-seasoned writer before I'm even 20. I mean, successful or not, I was able to start my writing career when I was 13 years old. That's pretty cool. So if you have a story you want to write, a piece of art you want to create, a dream you want to fulfill, go for it as soon as you can. It might not be perfect, but that's okay. You just have to take the leap. Yeah, you might hit a few trees, but you'll be flying a lot sooner than those who waited. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I know, a bit of a different video. It's not exactly a video essay, but you know, I'm gonna be introducing some new content to keep myself sane. So hopefully you'll stick with me if all you did was subscribe for my essays about the difference between modern stories and classic stories. But yeah, that's basically the story of my trilogy. I hope this encouraged you as a writer or artist, and maybe encouraged you as a reader to pick up my books. Trying to be honest about the flaws while also trying to market is not exactly an easy balance to balance. But I also know that if my audience on here and also with my books ever does pick up, then I want to be honest about my thoughts and feelings on the trilogy and also the possibility that there might be a new version someday. So yeah, buy my books. Thanks, and I'll see you next time. Oh, that's what I get for it being like a week old.